Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Buenas tardes. My name is Chris Ash. I am the Director of the European Institute for Innovation Technology, based in Schwäbisch Gmünd in Germany. I have been given the real task of what's called a graveyard shift, because we've had a fantastic lunch, and I know that everybody has been here for 2 days now, and I'm hopefully trying to keep you all stimulated, and I don't want to bore you in any sense. Given that I'm a Director of Innovation, I will do things slightly differently. So I'm not going to just go through presentation and bore you with lots of knowledge and facts and figures, etc., etc. I've taken a number of notes of the previous presentations today. I will go through what's our project SME Power is all about and what the objectives is of that. And then I will open up the floor really to some discussion, because I know that we didn't have the opportunity this morning to have a Q&A session, a question and answer session. So I will try to stimulate that debate. Now, given that I'm from a kind of university background from many years ago, I'm not going to answer the questions that I ask, but what I am going to do, I'm going to pick out some people to answer some of those questions. If your English or Inglés is not so good, that's not a problem. Just tell me that that's the case. I know some people in the audience already, and I know that they're very, very experienced in EU projects. So I'm going to try and mix this with the event this morning to look at how do we take things forward. Okay, is that okay with everyone? Good. Okay, so we are involved with a project called SME Power. What's SME Power all about? Well, you know that there's been lots of funding with respect to high-intensity energy users, but there's been a lack of funding with respect to low-intensity energy users, SMEs. And I call these the hard-to-reach individuals, or the hard-to-reach organizations. You're speaking about a company that may be 5 persons, could be 2 persons, could be 15 persons. And their business is about making profit week to week. They're really not that interested in carbon reduction. They're not that interested in energy efficiency. So this project was trying to engage with small, medium-sized enterprises and try to influence them in a way that to say that, you know, what you're doing at the moment can be better. And we can do things in a different way. And we can also provide some financial incentives or interventions that will change both the behavior of SMEs, raise awareness around energy efficiency. So that's the whole purpose of the project itself. Okay, so there are 6 partners and an advisory partner in the project. You will see we have a partner in Heinola in Finland, Westbeck from Ireland. We have Durham County Council in the UK. We have Castilla in Spain. Our lead partner is ARRR from Florence, Firenze in Italy, and ourselves, the European Institute for Innovation for Technology, which is the advisory partner, and last but not least is the Energy Agency from Petui in Slovenia. So if we look at this, this is really the history of the project itself. We're looking at energy efficiency products, we're looking at building and processes, and we're looking at capacity building measures Basically, what we're trying to do is raise awareness around the SME community to say, look, you can do things in a different way, and you can also do this that will be profitable to your business. Now, given that this project has existed since, I think, 2017, we never foreseen the energy increase that we're all now facing. The price increase, the inflationary increases of prices. So this project now is very much in the scope and in the view of SMEs. If they want to do things differently and they want to do things in a much more cost-effective way, then this is the project that they need to look at. As I said previously, we're looking at non-energy intensive SMEs. And the target audience really is energy managers. We're looking at low carbon strategies. We're looking at investments in energy efficiency and renewable energies. These are all topics that were mentioned previously this morning. Okay? The one thing that I had noted this morning was the term one-stop shop. I don't believe it. Not for one moment. I do not believe there is such a thing as a one-stop shop. What I believe is there's a multi-agency or multidisciplinary approach, and that needs engagement with a number of actors to bring that together. To think that we have a one-stop shop is just, it's fanciful, and personally I think it is an easy approach to look at a very, very complex issue. Okay. You will see also, in terms of the Observatory of European SMEs, less than 30% of SMEs in Europe have implemented measures for conserving energy. 30%, a third, 1/3 have nothing. They've done nothing, absolutely nothing. I see a slide earlier this morning, 40% of energy used in the EU is from buildings. Now, if you're going to put your money into anything that's going to reduce energy or try to decarbonise, then buildings is absolutely the area that you would focus on. But look what's happening. These are SMEs that have buildings. These are SMEs that have transportation and mobility issues. 1/3 are not even thinking about that. Now that's quite serious. So it's not just about developing strategies. This is about engagement. This is about behavioural change. This is about awareness raising to say, look, you can do things in a different way. Okay. So what's the objectives? Well, the project aims to design public policy that gives a guide to non-energy intensive SMEs through investment steps necessary to improve energy efficiency in processes, buildings and products. We've had several presentations this morning around Horizon Europe. We had a network session this morning of different funding possibilities that exist. And I think there is an immense amount of funding opportunities to change the way that we kind of do business, or the way that SMEs do business. And that's fundamental. So it doesn't necessarily have to just come from Interreg Europe. It can come from Interreg, the B programme, which is the implementation, or it come from the research programme, Horizon Europe. Importantly, I'm going to mention something which I'm involved in, and I think it is very important to mention. If you're going to change mindsets, you need to change those mindsets at a very early age. There's a programme called Erasmus+, and Erasmus+ looks at young people. So I think the focus sometimes is on technology. There's too much emphasis on technology. Technology will do a certain amount, but it will not do it all. You have to bring people with you. And the way I think to do this is a parallel approach to look at technology along with a behavioural or an educational programme. So I would encourage those that are not involved in the Erasmus+ project to look at that. It's something I think that can complement a Horizon project or an Interreg project, and it's something that IFETech have done, and done it very successfully in a number of projects where we have had this kind of parallel approach. The specific objective, I'll not really bore you with all this, but what we had to do is identify good practices within the project, and then develop 6 action plans, basically improve regional policies. Now, you may or may not be familiar with the ROPs, the regional operational plans. This is where a region will look at how they put their structural funds, where do they align their structural funds, and these are ERDF funds. Where do they put that? Now, this is a competition. This is a real competition. It's very competitive. So what we have to do in this project is make the case whereby we are able to convince the regional operational plans to allocate 10 million, 50 million, 100 million of ERDF funds allocated to energy efficiency in SMEs. Why? Because we can reduce our carbon footprint by X. Okay? So that's the critical point. And at this project, we're at that stage. In fact, by the 30th of June, the 6 action plans will have been completed. And from the 1st of July 2022, those action plans will then be implemented into the regional operational plans and will be evaluated and will be monitored over that period. The good practices is where one region may have a system that operates and it's doing really, really well, and one of the project partners said, well, we don't do that. Can we exchange that good practice? And this is I think the real benefit of Interreg Europe, where you get this exchange of good practice. And we'll do this in the round table. I will spot a couple of good practices that I am very aware of and very familiar with. And maybe it will be quite interesting to some of the participants to see, is that a real good practice, or is it something that's a really good experience that could be replicated and build capacity? I note that Paddy had said previously this afternoon about building capacity. Building capacity is a critical element in what we're doing in terms of decarbonisation. It's extremely important. So the good practices and the action plans we shall come on to in the round table. This is really the methodology of the project itself. We looked at an analysis of a map of energy support for SMEs, first of all. Then we went on to looking at where are the good practices, where do these exist across Europe, and then we developed the action plans. And as I said, we're at the point now of the implementation of the said action plans. The methodology is split into 2 phases. The first phase is basically what I just described. The second phase is the action plan implementation and the policy instrument improvements. This is all kind of boring stuff. What does this actually mean to an SME? Well, this means to an SME that you can engage with those and say, look, if you're looking for some investment, I can bring you to that investment. I can bring you to 20, 50, 100,000 of co-financing that will provide your business with the opportunity of possibly buying new equipment, which is much more energy efficiency. It could be looking at how you train your staff to be much more energy competent and energy efficient. So there's a range of measures that the SME Power has looked at. That's really the dates, and I've just explained what they are in terms of the first phase. Don't worry about the acronyms and JSs and MAs, blah, blah, blah. This is sort of internal issues. But the point being, as I said, from August, the implementation of those action plans will be put into place in each of the regions. And that's a kind of short overview of SME Power. SME Power is a policy project. It's looking at creating the conditions whereby it owns the strategy. Okay? It was mentioned earlier about Horizon 2020 and also sorry, it's Horizon Europe now. Also looking at Interreg projects. Very interestingly, the Interreg is, in my view, probably the most important of all the programs in Europe. The reason why? It doesn't sit on the shelf. It's not just research. It's not just a concept. What I believe is that the policy projects are implemented first of all, and from the policy projects, then you implement the B programme of Interreg. Actually, you start to put that into the regions, and you start to create the capacity and implement that. That's extremely important. So, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to give an overview also now of some notes that I took this morning regarding cross-cert and metrics. I have taken a few notes of these projects. Very interesting, extremely interesting from the research perspective, but also linked to SME power. And I made some comments around the deep renovation platform. Yeah, that's fantastic. And I also made some comments around quality EPC regarding training. But what I seen on the presentation was training almost just for training's sake. What I didn't see was standards. I didn't see standardization. And that's important, because if we're going to do something, we have to do it right. And I'm going to give you something that I have, somebody, I think most people that know me, they've heard this before. In fact, I'm just going to open this up. I'm going to pick on Paddy, actually. You're easy. You have heard energy efficiency many, many times. Everybody, yes? Yes? Yes. Okay. Energy efficiency. And have you ever heard the term energy effectiveness? No. No. Energy effective. So I'm going to challenge Paddy. I'm going to challenge. Paddy, I know you're a true guy, not a problem at all. There's no right answer, there's no wrong answer, and then I'll provide something. But could you tell me the difference between energy efficiency and energy effectiveness?
Thank you, Chris. I suppose the definition of efficiency, using a technical, is the calculation of the power output versus the power input. So it's a thermodynamic process whereby energy cannot be lost in a system. So efficiency comes down to, in any system, the calculation between the energy input underneath the line dividing that of the energy output above the line, and any losses in between. There's no such thing in the real world, maybe in theory, but in practice, you cannot have a 100% efficient system for anything. It just doesn't exist, because you lose your energy through. So energy efficiency principally is about improving, be it fabric, be it thermal, water, transport, district heating, whatever the system might be, electrical. It's improving the efficiency, is reducing the losses. So that's my understanding of energy efficiency. Energy effectiveness, this is new, so I have to think about this a little bit. So how effective is the use, I suppose, in the first case, of whether or not there's energy required there? So are we putting energy into something that we needn't put energy into? So that would be an ineffective use of energy. So I suppose the difference in my mind would be how effective we're using that energy. So to put a simple term on it, a truck driving from A to B on a route Fundamentally, its primary deliverable is to deliver the goods in the truck at point B. That truck is whatever efficiency it is in terms of driving. So the efficiency of the truck itself bears no relevance to the route it chooses to go on. So the route it chooses to go on is how effective it uses that energy. Now, I don't know if that's too simple or not, but...
No. That's a good engineer's answer, because I know Paddy's background, and it's very similar to mine from an engineer's perspective. Can I maybe just simplify that into non-engineering language? Because I agree with you. I totally agree with you. Energy effectiveness is choosing to do the right thing. Energy efficiency is doing the right thing right. Because you can be very effective at doing the wrong thing. Now, I know the English language is kind of, you think, whoa, what's he talking about? So you can be very efficient at doing the wrong thing. And I think, personally, this is from my experience, I've been involved in EU projects for over 20 years, etc., 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 been involved in universities and education and blah, 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 blah. I know, just from my experience, many, many times we've chosen to do the wrong thing. Now, the afternoon session about climate adaptation, etc., these are really important issues. And what we have to do is be very effective. We need to choose to do the right thing. And what we have to do is make sure that the population do the right thing right. That's extremely, extremely important. Okay? So, I think sometimes there's too much focus on technology. I'm involved in a project with my colleague at the back here, Madeline, in a project called True Impress, which is a North Sea region project. It's way beyond the heat of today. And that project generates 20% energy efficiency with no technical measures at all. 20%. That's like jumping into a taxi in León, going back to your hotel. It should have been €1 for your taxi ride, but he's going to charge you 80 cents. Would you do that? Of course you would do that. Is that financially effective? Of course it is. Is it energy effective? Of course it is. So I think we need to look at energy, not just from the technological viewpoint, but also from the people viewpoint, from behavioural change. It's extremely, extremely important. In fact, I believe, just my personal opinion, I believe it's more important than the technology itself. There's a technology and people mismatch. Okay, so in terms of what I've just said, in terms of energy efficiency and energy effectiveness, I hope I was clear on what I believe is the kind of definition of that. You know, that you can only be efficient if you're choosing the right thing to do, okay? Because you can actually increase energy use and increase energy consumption if you're not choosing to do the right thing. In terms of cross-cert, and I don't think the presenter's actually in the audience now, but I looked at what the presentation was referring to, and data and digitization. One of the recommendations that I would basically say was there was limited data. I think it was 29 houses in the UK. I mean, 29 houses in a population of 70 million is like, that's not going to give you any evidence at all. And I know from previous experience directly in EPCs that you need to have data that's going to provide accuracy in EPCs, and not all regions will give you data. So I think in terms of recommendations, there needs to be any public building needs basically an obligation whereby that public building provides the data that will provide much more accuracy around the EPC. Mark, Margarita?
Yes.
Maybe, can you just explain to me what the deep renovation platform, yes.
Okay. This morning I didn't have time, so sorry. What we did was to create this deep renovation for citizens, but also for professionals. So 2 target groups, first thing. And the main contents are about renovation and also some links to the official website of the energy performance certificate information. So if somebody wants to download the model of the official certificate, wants to know the legislation, blah, 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 is there, okay? The links with some brief explanations. And then about deep renovation, we have some links of the energy performance issuers or certificators, I don't know, sorry, the English word. Also, we have included some examples of real energy performance certificates, the official and our model, public buildings and residential. It's more focused on residential, but we also did, sorry this morning I didn't tell you, but some municipal buildings, mainly schools and offices, offices of these municipalities. And another information, financial resources to make deep renovation, for instance, etc. But this is the main, I think, contents.
Okay. No, thanks for that. Can I maybe just ask in terms of when you say deep renovation, there was two aspects of deep. What is meant by deep renovations? What's the criteria of that? And the second point that I noted down from one of the presentations later this afternoon was around energy inefficient buildings. What is meant by that? Is there a benchmark to what's called deep renovation? Is there a benchmark of what that is?
Okay. Yes, I think our idea is to, when we want to make deep renovation, we want the building to be nearly zero energy consumption building. Okay, this is the idea. Okay, so also we know that for some buildings this implies a lot of high investment, sorry. So we also have this, we'll say, another topic is about cost effectiveness. Very difficult.
No, of course. I mean, there has to be an economic view to that, and that's becoming much more apparent now with the cost of energy. There needs to be that. Can I maybe just then go back to the SME power and how that's constructed and how these policies, the policies are looking beyond today. It's more strategic policies. In SME power, we set up regional stakeholder groups. These were groups that were multidisciplinary, came from different disciplines, came from different areas, and these were very influential indeed. And from the regional stakeholder groups, this is where the action plans were, the concept of action plans were started to be developed, and the good practices were started to be identified. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick out a couple of people really just to maybe just explain some good practices with respect to energy efficiency targeting SMEs, okay? And hopefully that will be able to transfer and engage and be of interest to the participants. As I said previously, I'm not going to bore you with a lot of presentations and a lot of talk. Okay, I want to get really to the point, and I want to then wrap it up so that any discussion can be then had over a beer, a cerveza, so that's probably the best way of doing it. So I'm going to target myself a few of the partners of SME Power just to explain what good practices they have identified, and maybe if they could then explain how they have shared that good practice, how they've exchanged that good practice with maybe another partner or even another organisation that was outside of the project itself. Okay, so I'm going to people who are very, very anxious. When I start to walk, they're very anxious and thinking, is he coming close to me? I'm not a partner. Oh, blah, 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 blah. I'm actually going to go to Finland. Yeah. So we're going to go to Hinla in Finland first. And I know that Jana was not expecting that at all. I think Helen was most definitely, because I'm English speaking, she was absolutely prepared for this. Jana.
Thank you, Chris. And what was the question?
You have to keep people on their absolute toes, especially at this time. Okay, good practice. I think you've got a couple of good practices, haven't you? Yeah. In fact, you have so many good practices in Finland. I was in Malta last week, and one of the good practices that you identified in SME Power was brought up in an Interreg Europe conference, believe it or not. Yeah.
Okay, actually about good practices in Finland. So actually the starting point was that we were studying let's say the support instrument structure of SMEs, and of course there are a lot of them in the EU and in Finland also, but the basic issue is maybe that there are not so many concrete grassroots level instruments that SMEs really can use. And we actually identified two ones that are potential for SMEs. The first one was Energy Aid, which is a governmental grant for energy efficiency and renewable energy actions of SMEs, and it can be granted for SMEs among other organizations. And it's a very simple instrument, and it's continuous. It's not depending on EU funding or other project resources. It's always there, even if might be a bit challenges for the smallest companies, because there's a limit. You have to do minimum 10,000 euro investment. And for some small companies, it might be too big. And the second one is a carbon footprint calculation, which actually is like a mirror kind of tool for SMEs to study their current situation and then to apply the results of the calculation to their strategies and operation. And if we go further from mere idea of carbon handprint, when a company can develop something, new products which help another company to decrease their carbon footprint. So this is kind of one important tool to be, let's say, enhanced among SMEs. Did that answer to your question? Okay.
It did, but it wasn't the good practices that I was aware of from last week. These were two good practices that I'd seen from Finland. The one was removing oil from SMEs, and the other was removing oil from residential homes as well, which was very, very, very simple, but very effective. When I go back to that efficiency and effectiveness argument, these were very effective indeed. And the contemporary answer to that is Finland being close. You need to reduce, have your much more energy security back. So they were excellent examples. So I accept the measures that are being put in place, and I accept what you're saying that, for instance, €10,000 to an SME may be a lot of money, and maybe not a possibility to try to implement. So in some cases there are obstacles, there are barriers, financial barriers, and we have to try to look at those. And I think I might move on to a second good practice, and again, people are very much on their toes, and I'm looking to see where I'm going to go. I think I'll go to Slovenia. The wonderful place, if nobody's ever been to Slovenia, there's the oldest town in Slovenia is called Petui, and this is where Tia is from. Tia, maybe you can just brief discussion of your good practice or good practices.
Yes, hello, I'm from Ptuj, the oldest town from Slovenia, but I'm not the oldest. In SME Power project, we have identified two good practices that were really relevant for SMEs. One is how to successfully use cohesion funds. For example, in Slovenia in 2019, there was a call opening directly targeting SMEs in touristic sectors. What provided was like to invest into the energy efficiency in SMEs, and it was co-financed in a high share of 75%, and this was co-financed by the Cohesion Fund. So this was a really successful call, a really great grant, and especially now we think that because of these COVID situations, the touristic sector is most effective, and this is the way we can help touristic SMEs, especially SMEs, to recover after this difficult situation. Another good practice from Slovenia is we offer support, it's national support for SMEs and also for other enterprises for energy auditing. And it's co-financed in the share of 50%. So basically, if their SMEs decides to carry out energy audit, they will receive like 50% of co-financing after the implementation of energy auditing. Because of course, energy auditing is like a first step to improve your energy efficiency. You have to know where is your baseline, how to improve it. So we think this is like a first step into the right direction. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Tia. As you can tell in both the cases of good practice, it's looking at those financial instruments. This is really, really important. So it's mixing energy reduction, carbon reduction with industry to try to keep your economy actually thriving. And one of the points that Tia just mentioned there in that good practice was targeted on the tourism sector, and I think that's extremely important. And I think the policy instruments now, going forward, are going to be extremely important because we're coming out of COVID. Okay, lots of countries have not had any tourism at all, and if that was a sector that I would target, I would be absolutely saying that's effective. That's going to, in English words, kill two birds with one stone. One, that you're going to look at carbon reduction in that sector, and the second is you're going to actually increase the economic value of that sector as well. And I think that's where policies have to really look at. They need not just to look at one singular item, they need to look at several things that could possibly come, several benefits that come from the policy improvement or the good practice that may be implemented into that. I'm going to then go, well, I have to do this because it's the last time that I will be doing this. I'm going to go across the water now to the UK because, as everybody knows, the UK will not be a partner anymore in EU projects, which is a complete and utter disgrace, in my opinion. However, I'm going to my friend and my colleague, Helen, who's going to give a good practice, a very good practice, because it was so good that the good practice is not just good practice 1, it's good practice DOS. They have two good practices of the same thing. Helen.
Hello, thank you for reminding us that we've left the EU. Happy memory. So in Durham, we have a legacy of mining heritage and a large manufacturing sector. So we've often targeted our good practices on manufacturing businesses, but they are still small. They're still SMEs. We have very few large businesses in County Durham. So for some time we've run a project called the Business Energy Efficiency Project, and we wanted to work directly with SMEs and build relationships with them. So we undertake energy audits in their premises, and really the good practice is how we have learned and improved that work over time. Was to begin with, it was very basic and we didn't know what we were doing. And businesses didn't respond, and we've tailored our communications, the nature of the service, the type of energy audits, the way we write up the reports at the end, the way we continue to work with the business after the energy audit to see, what behaviours they changed. We've changed the financial instrument to encourage them to invest more themselves in energy efficiency and renewable energy improvements. And so far we've worked with just over 500 small businesses in County Durham. We have a long way to go. We think there's maybe 14,000 businesses in the county that have a premises. So we have a long way to go. And we have experienced increased demand. So the project continually refreshes. So we had a boost of demand from SMEs after COP, which was hosted in the UK in November. It created a huge amount of interest. And this year we have another surge of interest because of rising energy prices. So the UK is particularly affected by this. So you can expect to pay for your gas or electricity twice this year what you were paying last year. There's a huge economic impact for us, huge, leaving aside energy issues. And those are the two drivers of engaging SMEs in our view. One is the desire to change, maybe pressure from customers, maybe pressure from supply chains to be more sustainable, and the other one is cost. And we always approach them with, both those motivations in mind now. And the second good practice, which I think Chris is referring to, is the electric vans, yes? So we took some feedback from BEEP. We were not able to work on vehicles and transport under BEEP very effectively. So we decided to develop a separate project that would provide access to small electric vehicles for small businesses. And we offer a free trial of a small van. We have 4 vans we purchased ourselves and 3 different models. And you can try it for 2 or 3 weeks in your business for free. All you have to do is pay the insurance and show us that you're a responsible driver. And you can transport your goods and undertake your business. We've already had some SMEs who have made the switch themselves, so they have bought their own electric vehicle, which is the aim of the project, is to get SMEs over the initial barriers to engaging with low carbon technology, because there's still too much concern and bad publicity about electric vehicles and anxiety about electric vehicle infrastructure for charging. But actually we had a good sense that once you've tried an electric vehicle, you don't want to go back. And this is largely correct. So we invested our own money. After 2 years, those vans will return to our own fleet, as our own local government fleet. We would encourage anybody to try this method because it's a relatively cheap project, as it's turned out, and it generates a lot of good publicity and a lot of goodwill from the businesses taking part. They are somewhat surprised they can obtain this for free from their local council. And I think we're one of the first councils to do it as well. So thank you.
Thank you. And very interesting when you're saying about anxiety. I think the technical term that's used in most literature or academic literature actually shows you how boring I am, is range anxiety. And the one thing that I would say to any person that had range anxiety or wasn't wanting to develop an electric vehicle is look at your mobile phone. 20 years ago, you had a mobile phone and you used to carry a suitcase with a battery. And then you were looking to see where it was charged, and it took you about, 4 days to charge it. But look what we have in our hand now. Basically, I work all over Europe, and this is my office. It sits in a phone. I literally tell you, it sits on a phone. And but electric vehicles, all well and good, but where does the electricity come from? Is it green? Is it from renewable sources? And in most cases, certainly in the UK, it's very difficult to determine that is the case. So electric vehicles, yes, I agree. But we need to make sure we're still accelerating through to much more having green electricity, or we're having much more green hydrogen. So I'm not really going to pick up on anyone else other than I'm going to just wrap up today, because I know that's been a very long day, and for those that were at the conference yesterday, it's a very long day as well. I will just open it up. I'll give you one opportunity. If there's any questions you want to ask me regarding the conference today, please do so, and hopefully we'll open up a question and answer session. If there are no questions, then we can kind of wrap up, but I would like to bring some of the thoughts that I've just said in terms of they could be provocative. Take them into a glass of wine or a cerveza and discuss those. But what was really important for me that came out of today, that there are a lot of projects that are really striving to change the way we live in this world. And this is extremely important. It's not just for ourselves, but it's for our children and our children's children. And I know that that's easy said. However, I think some of the projects that have been demonstrated, and some of the projects, including SME Power, this is exactly why we are engaged in this work. It's not because it just gives us a job to do. It's something that we're deeply ingrained with, and we believe that there needs to be change. That change is difficult, that change is complex. Some of the politicians across all of the regions in Europe haven't got a clue. They come up with these policies, you know, we're going to be decarbonised by 2050. They're okay. You know, if you take Ireland as a particular case, Ireland's economy is based on agriculture. You cannot decarbonise agriculture to net zero. It can't happen. It just cannot happen. So therefore, what we need to do collectively as the member states of the EU is to say, okay, let's look at all the individual sectors, let's see our economies, let's see how they all work collectively, and then we will be able to come to net zero collectively. It cannot be done individually. Cannot be done individually. So I would encourage everyone really to look at that, to say, you know, yes, I can play a part in decarbonisation as a city, as a town, as a region, as a nation, but ultimately it needs to be collectively done. That's the only way you'll get to this net zero by 2050. So, without me lecturing you in any way, any questions? Paddy.
I know you love a question, Chris. Chris and I have worked on a couple of projects in the past, so we know each other well. I'm very interested in that Durham experience, just in the context of energy auditing. It's a simple statement, I suppose. Capacity to do the energy assessments is a really big problem. And that's only been compounded by the anxiety that society is feeling around, I suppose, energy cost is what's driving it. And I suppose historically experience as an energy agency where for the first iteration of our generational life, so I kind of call 2020 the change point for whatever reason, we used to look at energy in terms of kilowatt hours, and everything was about kilowatt hours, and Chris correctly stated that I answer and think like an engineer and not like a climate behaviour change expert. So behaviour change requires a lot more than just technical assessment and technical, but it does need science to back up where it's going. So the question really comes back to that experience in the project you've had where the resources to collect the data for the technical information required to make the business case for the financial investment. How are people, I suppose in your experience in the project, you have over 500 energy assessments done with SMEs. How did you resource that? Because if you follow the guidance at a national level, it requires, an 80-page energy assessment report, which is very technical and it has all the aspects around finance, around carbon, around so on and so forth, and all the appendices. How in your instance did you overcome that? And what sort of work has that triggered amongst those SMEs in terms of increased level of investment?
That's a good question. Very good. I actually think I know the answer, but anyway.
So we resourced our energy auditors. We had a team of 3 auditors using European Regional Development Funds. So we had 2 rounds of that from 2016 onwards. And from next year we will continue to support those auditors from core council funds. So the council feels the project is so substantial and well embedded in the business community that they will support the staff costs themselves. In terms of measures implemented, I actually don't have the figures to hand. We were just assessing this before I left the UK, and I can't recall, but we've invested, or the total investment has been something like £830,000 on measures for energy efficiency or renewable energy. Now, most commonly that is LED lighting. It's very simple. You don't need to make this more complicated than it is. LED lighting is very effective technology. We often don't offer grants for that anymore because the payback period is so good. But also solar PV, heat pumps, a lot of measures to upgrade equipment in manufacturing businesses is actually, in the UK, there's a lack of investment in processes and technology, so people using very old air compression tools that are leaking. It's, very simple things that you don't think of. We've installed UV sterilisation instead of steam sterilisation, saves a huge amount of energy. So it's quite a lot of measures. The businesses are the majority investors, so that we only contribute. Originally it was up to 40%, and now it's up to 30% because we want the businesses to contribute more. The other measures, the other benefits, we've been not so good at measuring, and we will need to get better at that. So we think there's things like job creation, obviously the fact that a business continues to operate where it may not have done. There's also a substantial benefit in terms of access to public sector procurement and supply chains, because at the same time the council is asking contractors, people we purchase from, to show us their sustainability plans. So you won't get a public sector contract in the future, potentially, unless you've done this work already. So for us, it's a virtuous circle of activity. It's a way we can embed, everywhere we have influence. But you can't, require with one hand without helping with the other, I think. So that's why it's a mainstream activity. I think in the future we will be looking to explore loans rather than grants, because we no longer have the ERDF funding. We can't access that anymore. We've asked the UK government repeatedly, every which way you can think of, we have asked them to support small business energy efficiency, but nothing has been forthcoming. Unfortunately, the focus in the UK is on big projects, heavy, large-scale hydrogen, nuclear energy, things like that. They're not doing enough to invest at, local level. And I'll get off my soapbox now, because it's a particular irritation of mine that, SMEs are not supported.
No, but collectively, I think you're absolutely right. If the SME power, if you collectively bring all of those SMEs together, then you've got a big industry. In fact, it's the largest industry. If you look, for instance, at the demographic of industry in the UK, SMEs make up, I think it's 95% of the total industry. And that is true across Europe. Gone are the days of big industry where you can just go and direct it at one point and say, oh, I'm going to save 20% or 30%. I'm going to reduce carbon by just doing this measure. So as Helen has pointed out, there's a plethora of measures that need to be put in place. And these will be different. These will be completely different in each region. Okay, so listen, I think we'll come to a conclusion on our roundtable discussion. I thank everybody for their contributions, and I would just finally like to say a very much a thank you to Poi from Castilla. And I think I'll give Poi the microphone. Poi was instrumental in putting the event together yesterday and today. This is not an easy task, believe me. I've done these things myself, and it's not easy at all. It's like, I think the term in Ireland and in the UK, it's like herding sheep. You're some kind of shepherd, and it's very, very, very difficult indeed. So I just think, yeah, I like to thank everybody for their participation. I know that it's a long, long day. I wish you well. Please enjoy some of the beautiful sunshine, maybe not so much of the heat. It's probably the warmest reception I've had in a long time. So, Poi, I'll just give you the microphone.
My colleague
Ricardo, okay. Ricardo. Thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you very much, Chris, because this was a really energetic kind of presentation, so that you were able that nobody got asleep. Congratulations. It was quite difficult because it's very hot outside. Well, thank you all of you for coming here, for being in León. I know it's a long travel to come here. And as I say, thank you for being here for this seminar and for the assembly. Today, as you know, we have a plan to visit the museum here in San Isidoro. It's really recommendable. You will find very astonishing things here in the museum, so please stay. Probably we will do 2-3 groups, depending on the final number of us. Maybe there's some people outside. And so we will divide in different, with 3 guides in order to be visiting the museum. After the museum, they told me that it's impossible to speak in the church. I wanted to show you the biomass system we have in the church, so we will try to explain something outside if it's not too sunny, and then you can get in for 2-3 minutes in order to see the heaters in the banks, okay? And then after the church of San Isidoro, which is at the end of this building, probably we will be doing a short walk for those who want to do it, to visit some of the more special places in the old town of León just before dinner. But if you do this with me, you will not be able to go to the hotel, so you can choose. Okay, thank you.